Tonight's panel discussion on Theatre Without Borders Towards an International Theatre as part of the North Walls Alchemy Festival. Thank you very much to Stage Text for working with us this evening. So please note that closed captioning is available and you can access this via a button at the bottom of your screen. I'm going to talk to you just for a couple of minutes and then I'll hand over to our wonderful panel. My name is Ria Parry and I am co-director of the North Wall Arts Centre in Oxford. And a big part of what we do is a programme called Arts Lab. Arts Lab is our artist development programme for early career artists. And through that programme, what we try and do is to support early career artists through space and mentorship, workshops, residencies, setting up collaborations, and very importantly, attempting to connect those artists to paid creative work. The Alchemy Festival is our annual new work festival, and it's our opportunity to showcase work by our Arts Lab network of early career artists and also our creative associates. It's usually an in-person event and it takes place across 3 days at the North Wall Arts Centre. This year we have gone fully digital, we've embraced that format, and there is a wonderful programme online right now filled with audio plays and podcasts, short films and shows. And we have kept this year one of our favourite festival elements, which is listening to brilliant people discuss topics which we feel are vital to the future of the theatre industry. Tonight's discussion will last around an hour, but just before I hand over to the panel, I would like to give a big thank you to our partner at Oxford University, John Livesey, who works with the Cameron Mackintosh Fund for Contemporary Drama. He's been our partner on the panel series, and we very much enjoyed working with John to deliver the series this year. So I'll just hand over to John to say a few words.
Thank you, Ria. So my name is John. I am the current drama officer for the University of Oxford. I oversee all drama activity on campus and work alongside local theatres like the North Wall on productions, projects and special events like tonight. In 1990, the university received an endowment from the Mackintosh Foundation to create the Cameron Mackintosh Drama Fund. We are very grateful to the continued support of the foundation, and I am thrilled to represent CMDF tonight. It's been a pleasure to work with the North Wall on these events, and I'm looking forward to listening to the conversation between our fantastic guests tonight.
Thanks, John. So without further ado, I will hand over to our panelists. Chris Nelson, who will be chairing tonight's discussion, Abdul Shayek, Nassim Soliman-Pour, Julia Levi, and Emma Hay. Thanks so much. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Ria. Thank you, John. You're all very welcome to this chat about, well, towards an international theatre. Perhaps we'll be talking about the future of international theatre. Perhaps we'll be talking about why we love it so much. I'm Chris Nelson. I'm Artistic Director and CEO of LIFT, the London International Festival of Theatre. Gathered with us today are 4 fantastic panelists who are practitioners, artists, and work in arts institutions with a real hands-on, artist-focused kind of way, either as presenters or as artistic directors. And so as each of us talk today, I'll have each of our distinguished guests introduce themselves and their connection with international theatre, where they are at. And of course, being very aware that this is a digital audience that might have a reach beyond its core, knowing that we have a core audience of young artists and practitioners and up-and-comers, but we also might have people who follow Abdul, Nassim, Julia, and Emma, and have come to pop along on this Wednesday night. So I just want to do a little bit of a framing thing. I won't take too much time, but I do think that we are at this moment for globally, of course, for international art, for the way audiences interact with live performance, and especially here in the UK, that's going to be different than ever before. We're in year 2 of the pandemic. We are, in my view, as we come out of it, facing a dual action of a kind of societal long COVID, where especially in the UK, we will see the deep impacts of the loss of life, the loss of jobs, the instability, precarity. In London, I keep thinking of the 750,000 people that have left the city in the past year. It is a very different world, and our audiences are going to be emerging into a different world, and we're experiencing a very different world. And at the same time, there's this flip of this kind of roaring 2020s that we keep hearing about, this kind of vaccine euphoria that's on our doorstep. I can't wait for that part. So there's a real push and pull, a starker contrast perhaps than we've ever faced. We've got this rise of nationalism that's happening all over the world, from India to Brazil to Turkey to right here in Brexit land. And here in the UK, let's not forget that when we think about internationalism, we have a government that we are in the land of the hostile environment. And we have a government that whose approach to migration, to outsiders, to others is like titled, published, the hostile environment. I still can't fathom that as a migrant here myself and as an outsider. It's wild. And at the same time, you also have this global Britain kind of post-Brexit endeavor to, claim some other kind of internationalism for the UK. So there's lots of forces that were at play, before I get on the soapbox, there's lots of forces that were at play, that are at play for us as artists and as practitioners. So, and then we've got also the importance of the local. If the one thing I think we've all perhaps learned during the pandemic, as my colleague Stella Canu says, you're probably much more acquainted with your local corner store than you ever thought you would be. And you know your locality, you know your local area, probably ever more than you ever did. So the importance of what's around us without ever taking a plane, a train, or a bus is important now more than ever. So the table has been recast. Everything that I knew coming into my career as an international arts maker has totally changed. And I'm curious about those changes that you are tracking, the four of you. I'm curious about, I hope today we can talk about what's been inspiring you through all of this, and what maybe some of your bugbears are that we can leave behind as we all enact the cultural reset. So I'd like to start within the frame of international theater. I'd like to start with one of our artists, and Julia, I'd like to start with you. When you get out your crystal ball or your tarot card deck, what do you foresee for theater artists, festivals, and venues about international theater and working internationally in the next 5 years?
Hello, everyone. Oh, big question. I think I was thinking just before we kind of...
Julia, sorry, before you start, you're an artist, yes?
Oh, yes, sorry, I didn't introduce myself at all. So sorry. Yes, so I'm a freelance theatre director, originally from Budapest, Hungary, but I've been based in London for a while. And I recently spent a couple of months in Serbia on a scholarship at the National Theatre in Belgrade, doing being their resident director, so associating on shows and working, I guess, with their international department, which has been really exciting. And maybe it's the euphoria after that I feel quite optimistic about the potential collaborations that might be happening internationally as we come out of this, because even though I think we all have a massive Zoom fatigue, there is definitely a sense that suddenly we realize we can get connected so easily. And I find myself now planning shows with dramaturgs and designers who are based in Serbia or in Hungary. And that, I think, really excites me, that actually what happens if you reimagine that shows can start being made even before we get into a rehearsal room, actually, when we're all in different countries. So I'm quite excited by the potential that you could make a show with a creative team who are all dotted around in different bits and places in the world.
So is that part of within your crystal ball, Julia, the kind of potential to develop new ways of working and new practices?
Yes, I think I like to think so, that actually there is a way for us to become more international, even if we can't always be in the same space. But I am quite desperate to be in a rehearsal room with actual human beings as part of that.
Aren't we all? Yeah. And you, Abdul, before we all came on, you said you have been in a rehearsal room. You've been, people have been making things in front of you. Please tell us where you're calling from and a bit about Tara Arts and tell us about that.
So I'm the artistic director of Tara Arts. I started at the end of the first lockdown, so August. This week has been really exciting because we're back in the building and there's people in the building. I've been in the building a few times, but there's people using the theatre, doing what we do in theatre, right? We come, we play, we make, we create stories, and it's been really lovely to be around that. It's been absolutely it's just really joyous, feeling really content today to be able to be part of that and be at home for those artists. And tomorrow I'm in a rehearsal room, so I'm doing a workshop with a writer and an actor developing a monologue, which will be part of our opening season. My background, I guess, in terms of international work, it really started in earnest when I was working for National Theatre Wales. Before that, I had a few forays into the kind of international space, but with NTW, we hosted a range of different companies from across the world, and then I got to travel. I feel like I joined at the right time. The company had made lots of noise, and lots of people across the world wanted to know more about this organization Without Walls, making work all over the place in Wales. And so I got to travel and talk about the company, and then I started to get opportunities to make work. And that was really brilliant and a really great opportunity to see the world, but also look at kind of different ways of working, cultural differences that I wasn't aware of, and I had to shift and change my practice to deal with that. And it was brilliant, and it's been amazing to be able to do that. In terms of looking forward, I guess a big question for me, and we haven't really touched on this, but the idea of international or internationalism in the context of the climate emergency is a really big question for me. And I think also, we talked a little bit about identity, but I think as a South Asian, or someone of South Asian heritage and an immigrant myself here in the UK, the idea of British identity and what's being exported out. So when I make work, I am really interested in conversations around the kind of nuance and complexities that exist. And so that's always been there for me. I've always been quite challenging around that. And I do think sometimes the work that we send out to the world can often be a particular type of work. And so I'm really interested in what we can do to change that. And so that's always been there. And the other thing for me has also been around whether we can create structures. So in essence, you create structures which then have content that interchanges dependent on where you go. And I think you guys are doing something at Lift at the moment, where you've commissioned or you've got a commission at the moment, looking at the same question, where we don't have to send people, but we send the idea and we send instructions, and people create based on the local stories and the local artists that they can connect with. And that's a really interesting, or a massive interest for me, because a couple of the projects that we're working on at the moment, one is a show called Final Farewell, where we're collecting stories of people who've passed away in our local community and creating audio walks. And we want to create a structure which then we can tour, but have new stories and new content created in each location. And then the other project, which is happening at the end of this year, is a piece, a VR piece, working with local, women from the Bangladeshi community in London, in Birmingham and in Manchester initially. But the idea will be whatever experience we create, again, we can just send files to interested parties across the world. And we're already talking to Campbelltown Arts Centre in Sydney, for example, and say, look, this is what we need you to do. and hopefully people can put on VR headsets and experience it. But yeah, so that's kind of where I think we need to be heading.
Towards new ways of working internationally. Great. I'm going to turn to you, Nassim. It seems the next choice, because you are one of the originators, I think, of something that inspired us at LIFT to create what Abdul referenced and is talking about, which is a form of this kind of work, a way of commissioning artists to where their ideas travel, but the people don't and the freight doesn't. So we're calling it concept touring, but lots of other people call it other things. More than 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, you created a piece called White Rabbit, Red Rabbit that has taken the world and still takes the world by storm. Will you tell us about that mode of international making, what you learned from it, and what you predict for that kind of making and making in general in the future?
Thanks, Chris. It's of course an honor to be with all of you, and also to be working with you guys at the LIFT with your beautiful concept touring residency. Well, yeah, my name is Nassim Soleimanpour. I am born in Iran. I tend not to say that I'm Iranian, since we're talking about the concept of nationality, because to me, these are like very vague terms. I mean, the fact that I'm happily married and I have a dog and I like Chris's beautiful pullover tells you more about me than my nationality. But as Chris said, almost 10, 8, 9, I mean, I don't remember, 2010, I wrote a play which is called White Rabbit, Red Rabbit. And that in a way was written out of a necessity, because I was in Iran, I couldn't travel, I didn't do military service. And in Iran, if you're a boy, you have to do it, otherwise they wouldn't grant you your passport. And I simply thought, well, if I just shift the paradigm in the structure of theater and ask brave performers to come in and do a cold read or stipend scene. And yeah, and this is how this show started, like touring all around the world while I was like sitting in my home in Iran and I couldn't leave my country. I made hundreds of, or like thousands of friends in the theater scene. And yeah, and I kept doing this since then. That's it for now. Just pass it back to you, Chris.
Thank you, Nassim. Emma, I'm curious on the flip side, as a presenter and someone, yes, program manager at Edinburgh International Festival, you work really hand in glove with artists to make their ideas and their projects come alive in one of the world's most beloved festivals, Edinburgh International. This year, you all have completely reinvented that by, which I'd love you to tell us about how you've done that reinvention and what this period of time, the pandemic, working, how it's changed your practice as someone who accompanies artists and makes their visions come to life.
Sure, thank you. So for those who maybe don't know, the International Festival was founded in 1947 out of the aftermath of World War II. And that's very much steeped in the way that we think and approach our work. Internationalism is inherent. And one of the sort of big seminal moments of that festival had been reuniting a German conductor with the Vienna Phil and a British soprano. So this sense of internationalism and the richness of what culture can do as a sort of reconciliation process or a sort of spiritual enriching process is very much there. In response to the last year, I guess what that has really asked us to consider is what is internationalism when internationalism can't mean global reach in the same way relating to travel mostly. What is internationalism on a local level, and how do we access international stories or themes in the communities that exist around us? And picking up on Abdul's point, I think the climate emergency is a major factor in that. How can we be a sustainable presenter? How can we bring like what is great about works in the Global South to the UK, enabling touring or sharing of practices and ideas and mitigate our carbon footprint is a massive question. And I can be positive about this because I had a day off today. I spend quite a lot of time, or our team spend quite a lot of time in the nitty gritty of what does this really mean on a practical financial level. And it is hard because the answers are not always there. But what is inspiring is in this critical decade that we have ahead of us, if we reconvene this panel in 10 years' time, we will be looking back at some amazing innovations and decisions that have been made to make a more sustainable way of practice. And that also picks up on Julia's point of these opportunities of new ways of working that we haven't thought of yet. So it's an exciting time, but a nervous time because we can't see the changes that are going to happen extremely quickly. But in 10 to 15 years, probably what internationalism means in the context of being a presenter or a co-producer or even a producer on a very ground level of work is going to mean something different than it does in this conversation.
Thank you, Emma. It was a question I wanted to ask you all because it's been pretty grim in the arts these days. Sometimes I found it quite grim. And I also have found these amazing flashes of inspiration. And often, as Emma pointed out, those flashes of inspiration come with a new way, a sensing that a new wave is coming, a new way of being together as audience and artist, a new way of performance, or a new way of collaborating. And I'm wondering what has been, especially internationally, when you look abroad, where have you been drawing your inspiration from?
Is that for me or anyone?
Sorry. I was hoping it was just going to magically inspire. It's me. I want to say this. This is what's inspiring. Whoever, we don't need to keep going around the circle. So,
like panelists.
Yeah.
I think for me personally, in terms of where I've been looking for inspiration, just because of the company's history, I have looked over to India. I've been looking at work that's taking place there, having conversations with artists, commissioned a writer to write a monologue, but the local has been just as important to me. The hyperlocal has been really important to understand the context that we're presenting the work in, so that we can understand and develop the conversation with the international artists that we're having the conversations with much more of a sense of the local and what we want to provide our audience and what our audience might want after the last year that we've had. So yeah, I think for me it's been India, but certainly in the past it's been a bit all over. Wherever there's interesting work, I'm kind of keen to look and see what's possible. And obviously now I'm in this position where I can commission and produce work, whereas in the past it's been self-producing or working on the basis of where opportunities come up. And I mentioned the British Council. It's a useful space to kind of keep an eye on, because obviously they have a range of different funds, and they had the digital fund not too long ago, which was £50,000. And they are doing a bit of work around kind of potentially relaunching that fund, or putting people in touch with others across the world that might be of interest. So for our listeners or the people watching the conversation, it's worth a gander over there to see what's going on.
Thank you. What else has been inspiring you and pulling you through? Julia?
I kind of have been looking, I guess, because of this recent time in Serbia, quite a lot in Europe, and just looking at the work that the European Theatre Convention does. So that's with Creative Europe. They do a lot of work in connecting different European theatre buildings and European, or like anyone who is based, I guess, in those countries. And then you get to directors and dramaturgs get to travel and spend some time in these countries, which I found very just quite exciting and inspiring, and also how they're trying to now move some of their work online. And Creative Europe seem to be doing just a lot of international collaborations. And I'm doing some work at the moment with Pilot Theatre, who are a touring company in the UK. And they have been doing some international collaborations that focus very much on video games and like digital work, and how can we actually, what's the theatricality of VR, kind of what you were saying as well, Abdul, like what's the VR stuff that we could be actually building into our own theatrical experience, and how can we ensure that the theatricality is not lost just because we move things online. And I'm not sure I found answers yet, but I'm quite intrigued by that thing of how can we find the theatrical in the digital, or is there any? And that's been quite inspiring.
Just going to say, allegedly, I'm mentioning it because that was the first piece that allegedly is by an Indian artist, Malika Taneja. Is it Taneja? Am I saying that right? I should know. But I think that was the first time where she made me feel like I was part of a community. Yeah, I wasn't with other people, and I think that was what made that piece really brilliant, because we all felt like we were part of a community, which is really interesting. It was all on Zoom.
It's a piece, for me, the ingredients of that piece, just to describe it, is so it's a piece where two friends have really frank conversations about a sexual assault among a couple. So, but that's interrupted by this moment in the Zoom where two things happen. All of a sudden the cameras get taken over, and there's all of these Zoom windows of all of these women from around India who are commenting on the dialogue between the two lead characters. And they're sort of comic characters and judgmental and gossipy and incendiary in their comments. And then at the same time, there's a moment using this old format or a very long-standing tradition of forum theater, but placed in a Zoom. So all of a sudden there's a poll to the audience, and you have to sort of judge on, make a judgment call on who's telling the truth, or what's the real outcome of the story that you'd like to see. So it's engaging and interactive. And yeah, it did have that feeling for me too, Abdul, of oh, this is live. It's not just canned. And
there was the three different communities, I guess. You had the community of what the two people talking to each other, the two friends. You had the group of women who were a community of women who were connecting with each other and talking, and then it felt like we were then a third community on top of that, which is really interesting. And it felt like, you know, they were also, for me, it felt like the Greek chorus commenting on the action, really interesting. So yeah, it was a really nice way to mix it all up. So I thought that was really interesting in terms of it done.
Yeah, there's I don't know if any of you had this kind of experience through the last year, but that feeling of being in a lobby somewhere, or dialing into an international performance. There was one night where I was simultaneously on two screens in Yokohama and Vancouver, and that felt really wild and strange, and like trying to get a sense, because you try and get a sense of a local audience anyway. But I'm curious about in that Venn diagram of digital internationalism and audience, have you noticed anything that you think is amazing in this sort of experimental year that we've had, where everyone has rushed into the digital space? Do you think Nassim or Emma or Julia or Abdul as well, are there anything that you go, oh, that's amazing, that's actually a trend that we need to keep going and keep encouraging?
I would say for us, yes and no, because I think what we have really tried to become more comfortable with is where we stand in terms of the live and how we can be part of that sort of regeneration. But there's definitely much more thought and consideration around the audience experience of digital, rather than it being simply a relay of something, how are forms and technology enabling that sort of sense of shared experience and audience experience to come in much more than what we saw at the beginning of the pandemic, which was everyone pivoting and pushing content. And I think there's some interesting territory between the creative departments now and marketing and communications, because we are coming closer together. We're not saying here's the show and then this is how you sell it. There's an interesting territory where we might be able to build audiences or reach audiences again who maybe can't travel or won't travel so much in the future. But how is that the stepping stone to the live experience? How can it break down barriers to people who perhaps don't feel comfortable with the formal experience of attending a theatre, or the etiquette of some classical music performances or very serious theatre can be a barrier. So how can it, I suppose, enable a better audience experience for more people and supplement what we can offer in a live space rather than instead of?
I mean, I also, for me, and pardon me when I say it, it's just like could be like the writer's disease. It's very personal. It's just like, you know, the filter of what is happening to me is how I understand the world. Of course, I try to consume. And the concept of time, I think, has always been a thing that I've had huge problems with. That why do I have to rush to write the next play? Why are we like, I mean, I had like in November where like I performed as a performer in 9 countries, you know, and that is sad. It's heartbreaking for a maker. You do it, you enjoy it. I mean, if I know we have younger audience, I don't want to be bad influence. You know, I would kill to do this. But when we do it like again and again, and you have to create and you have to make and you have to run from one airport to another airport, we have people who are physically, mentally available. And we have people who come from Shiraz, you know it from through the grapes, who are like a bit slow and like laid back like myself. And I think what happened with the pandemic, what I hope stays in a way, was that like for a fraction of a second, there was this huge switch in the understanding of the concept of time. And then the dynamic between not only, as Emma mentioned, the audience and the organizations, but between the organizations and the artists changed. So it wasn't like, Nassim, come here, we give you this commission. And I'm like, well, of course I should do it. I love to work with these guys. Give us like a draft in a year. And if I'm like lucky in a year and a half, they would very politely say like, what can we do to help? Which is the polite version of give us the freaking play, you know? So it suddenly turned into, we want to chat, we want to connect. What's happening with you? What do you think? What do you think we should do? Which I hope it stays like this. I mean, that's something that I really, that was a silver lining for me as a maker during the pandemic.
Nice. Are there any other silver linings for you?
I think what's been really nice is the embedded nature of the work that we've been doing. So a lot of organizations, especially theatre organizations, have had to switch to, well, their participation department or the education department has been the most active over the last year or so. And connecting and embedding themselves into communities has been really, really important. And I really want the sector to hold on to that and not to get lost with main house shows now. Therefore, our education department goes back to the side of the organization and stops being central to the organization. And I think that's really important. We learn from this experience as to how important those departments are for us for a range of different reasons. But yeah, that's been really nice.
Shifting out of the local for a second, I get asked to do I've been in this conversation about the future of internationalism in UK theatre. I think it's a really valid question and topic, and I've been in the conversation a few times because I run an international theatre festival, and also because I think Brexit and the rise of populism in the UK have made for a climate whereas arts people and cultural people were really doing some soul searching and going, okay, well, what is going to be our relationship with the rest of the world? As you got jingoism on the one side, and you have this incredibly diverse population in the country, and many of whom have multiple passports or are migrants or have lived, have families who are from other countries or have lived abroad, and et cetera, et cetera. It's a kind of conversation we might be having here in the UK that we might not be having if we were in another country and if in living within another culture. So my question is, if you could change one thing about the UK and the relationship we have here with international culture, what would it be?
That one I want to go first because I don't live in the UK. Well, change your visa process. It's horrible. Sorry to say that. Nassim the play is a show that we created at the Bush, and then we took it to the lovely Edinburgh Fringe, and then we toured it all around the globe. I mean, we had like 2 years and a half, 500 shows. And when we wanted to bring it back to the UK, we didn't get our visas, my wife and I, and the shows got canceled. That is like a play in itself. I mean, I could write a novel about it. And I can report, as someone who got lots of tier 5 visas on an Iranian passport, that the last one, the one that got refused, the process was more complicated. I mean, it was different. I mean, it would be boring for you to go into the details, but that's a very simple thing. I mean, come on, you're a Canadian. I mean, I got many Canadian visas. You can do it like, even like without the passport. It could be just like an email, which is sent to my computer, and I print it and I run to the airport. When you talk about like a touring company, even like asking an artist to leave your passport here for 2 weeks and then come back and pick it up, meaning like losing 10, 20 shows. Lots of complications for many festivals, companies, agents, to just get involved to try to, to do this. And the funny thing, that's like something that I would love to share with you guys, is that like my wife and I applied. I went for the priority visa because it was just like, I should arrive, the show would get canceled. I'm a performer in the show. They were like, okay, she doesn't arrive, we recover because it's way more expensive. That's around £500 to £600 for this visa, for the priority visa. And then we got our answers at the same time. So I go to the embassy and I'm like, okay, and it's like, okay. And I'm like, okay, wait a second, but I applied for the priority visa. So I was supposed to receive it 2 weeks ago. They told me, oh, it's wrong. So you have to basically file like a complaint. I'm just like, okay, how can I do that? They're like, you have to pay us like 20 quid to file this complaint. I'm like, wait a second. So I paid you 500 to put me on a priority visa. You didn't do it. Now I have to pay you another 20 to do this. It's just like an example, I think.
I think a really valid one. It's why I mentioned the hostile environment at the beginning, because it is increasingly a deterrent. I've talked to a lot of artists who said, I don't know if it's worth it coming to the UK. It's not worth coming to London. And I'm from a small town in Canada. I'm like, it's not worth coming to London. What? It's the theater capital of the world. It's humiliating. The process is humiliating. And Byzantine, and Brexit makes it weird. And as audience members who should have access to international culture in a country as rich as the United Kingdom and as interconnected as the United Kingdom with its colonial past and all of those things, it's like it should be I believe is an essential part of our lives to have access to international culture. As audience members, we need to be aware that there are millions of roadblocks that the government that you pay taxes to puts in the way, so people can't be here. And there have been, letter campaigns led by EIF and the Edinburgh Book Festival, and we were a signatory of, saying this is robbing audiences of a chance to connect with leading international voices. But it's not, that's not the top issue and that we're all working on right now in terms of the cultural reset, keeping venues open and festivals alive and freelancers employed or having not just a livelihood, but opportunities to make. But I agree with you 100% in this.
It is worth, on the flip side of that, acknowledging also the difficulties that now arise for British artists trying to tour in Europe, and the opportunities, the financing that can come for companies being able to take their work. So not only are we losing the richness of opportunity of bringing artists here, but we're losing our place at the table by being able to be present elsewhere. And that, I think, is completely detrimental, which was not the point I was going to offer as something to change. For me, I think the recent news around the proposed funding cuts to higher education and arts education is really significant. And we will not really see the effects of that in a big way for a long time, but we run the risk of your ability to work or participate in the arts being a privilege, or something that belongs to people who can afford the education. And I think that is completely against all the sort of strategic work organisations are doing in terms of increasing their diversity and inclusion policies. Also sustainability, which is not economically sustainable if we work on that kind of model. So really we have to invest in offering education in the performing arts, not even if you want to go into the creative industries, but the benefits it has to science, innovation, technology, economics, by being someone who is literate in these subjects is enormous.
Thank you, Emma. Both important quick fixes. Well, not quick fixes, process quick fixes, but to me, they both signify a kind of value, the thing that is behind the mission for a lot of us in the cultural field, which is about instilling the value of exchange or the power of culture, or making sure that that's present. So the instilling the value of the importance of internationalism and being a good host and receiving international people into our society, or making sure that the value of culture is shared and part of the fabric of our lives. I mean, I think culture draws a lot of people who are big thinkers and who are not just working on the show, but they're also working on a bigger, broader project. They're working on a project of ways of being together as a society, ways of expressing, giving a platform for others to express. I mean, there's lots of things that draw us into it. And as we close, I wonder what you might say to this group of early career artists who we can't see. Wish we could see you and have you see your chatting or see the chats and like know when you've nodded off and what's actually made you sit up in your chair or what's making you reflect. But to speak to this group of artists that are listening to us and cultural people, what would you say to them? What are some tips or some words of wisdom to our listeners vis-a-vis, like, what should they be thinking about, or what would be a touchstone for them in thinking about an international life in the arts at this moment in time?
Shall I go? So as we're all being really polite, trying to look at each other, it'd be much easier in a room. We could be.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, no, I feel like I'm not sure if there's like words of wisdom, but it's definitely, I think, there's so much that's suddenly become available. And even though watching shows online is not the same, but kind of engaging with seeing shows that might be, like as you guys were saying, like shows that made in India or in Berlin, and seeing how everyone else is thinking, to me, that feels quite exciting and important in an increasingly binary world. Like we seem to be thinking that this is this way or that way. And I guess it just connects back to the UK and the rise of populism is actually by watching something else or talking to an artist who might be from Canada or from Iran, like it just allows you a different point of view. And I think I'm hoping that we might be able to create theatre and art and work that shows the complexity rather than the simplicity that I sometimes worry that because of how our media works, we're going towards. And I think there are lots of opportunities. I think, as Abdul said, like the British Council and Creative Europe and loads of places to just try and connect with other people, and whether that's international from across the globe, or if you're based in London, connecting to someone from Edinburgh, like even then, that's just, I feel quite excited by that possibility.
Great, thank you. And where would you go? What's your favorite source or site for, oh, they've always got a good international program, or if I read this newspaper, I'll know about an artist I'd never heard of from Chile or something. Where do you, what's your one-stop shop?
Oh, great question. I'm really excited. The Berlin Theatre Festival is coming up, and that's all online. And I think they have loads of different shows, not just from Germany.
Right.
So I definitely recommend looking that up. Theatertreffen.
Yeah,
Definitely said that wrongly.
Nope.
And I found, especially I think I was starting out, I read a lot of Exeunt magazine. They do a lot on like different theatres and just a lot of work that I find quite exciting.
Super, thank you. Any other words of wisdoms, touchstones for the future? Mottos?
I'm gonna share with you my feeling about something. I'm not sure if it really helps. I think it is good for a younger artist, maker, the younger generation. I mean, if I could go back and talk to myself, I would have told myself that, like, if you could decide, at least for a period of time, if there is a line, if you're a maker or you want to be more involved, like in the production side, decide where you're standing. And if you're standing more toward like an artist, this is like where like I could probably tell you something about. I would tell you, if I was going to draw in my head this image of an international artist, who would be my favorite artist? Because people tell me, like, who's your favorite theater maker? I'm like, I don't know them. You know, they're next generation. They're creating. They're like learning to come in and write a piece. And if I was going to describe this person, I would tell you, if there is a figure, 1 foot is where they are, where they were born, where's their roots. The other one is wherever, which is really far and they don't really know. Like if you created one thing in India, in my head, then it's your time not to work with India. Now you have to go, you know, somewhere else and work there. But the most important thing is that keep your head up in the clouds. That is how I would describe this figure.
Fantastic.
Sorry, go for it.
I was reflecting earlier, there was a question in the copy of this event around our current identity crisis. And I thought, oh gosh, how would I respond to that? And then I realised, well, it's quite obvious really, because the history of theatre has always navigated identity crises, because artists reflect back to us what is happening. The Greeks brought us catharsis, and Strindberg reflected advancements around psychology, and Brecht gave us allegorical theatre around fascism. Britain wrote his war requiem as a conscientious objector. So art is always there and it will be there. So I guess the question is, what can you bring and what is your reflection, and finding that centre in the chaos. And advice I would give, I have learned a lot about theatre from attending classical music concerts and dance. And I think we have to be less singular in our view about art forms and understand like the gifts of great art and working communities and what they can teach us about our own practice and others.
I think for me, advice at the moment, everything's up in the air. We don't know how it's going to land. I think people are open to ideas, radical thinking, shifting, changing. Be radical in your thinking. Shift your thinking. You know, shift. This is a moment for the sector to change. So really don't think outside the box. If you're going to ever do it, this is the time to do it. People are open and ready and want to, be with you on that journey. And I think advice in terms of things, tangible things, send that email. Send it, find that person's email and send it. And more often than not, if it's an artistic director of a really big festival or a medium size or a small festival, it's normally their name and then the festival after. Yeah, it's an app. So send it and see what comes back. I think it's really important, and people are responding. People are responsive. People will email you back. And it may take a few goes, as in like the name structure and the app bit, but you'll get there in there. And also it may take a few, a bit of time from the other side as well. But I think it's really important to send that email and like I say, think radically. Now is the time. We need it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you heard it here first and best. Have a big appetite. Keep your head in the clouds. Be really curious. Be really diverse in your viewing and your taste. Be radical in your thinking. Send that email. I love all of those things. The thing I would add would be find the other people who want to do that and stick to them like glue, and fight with them and argue with them and bounce ideas off them, because it's not meant to be, you're not meant to be on your own when you do this. And that doesn't mean you have to find the other actor or the other writer or the other designer or the other technician. You could be with people who have a totally different approach to the discipline, but find the people whose appetite and kind of potential for keeping their head in clouds and sending the email and having a diverse array of interests matches your own, but also pushes you, because that all of those examples from all around the world of people who've had really good success locally and abroad come from that feeling of like, we're feeding off each other and we're going to grow together. It's not this one solitary star that shoots up, but it's like a group of people who create a context so people can really soar. And that's true of your local thing or your international thing. Those are great words of advice from you all. Thank you for that. So yeah, have a big appetite, keep your head in the clouds, be really curious, be radical in your thinking, find your tribe, and let us know what you think. Thank you to John and to Ria for hosting us. I know they're going to pop back in fairly soon. You might have dinner on, maybe the dinger's gone. I'm going to make something that's going to go from the freezer into the stove, into my mouth. Maybe you are too. But really wonderful to be here, and thank you all for your time.
Thank you so much, Chris, and thank you so much to all of you for your generosity in your thoughts and kind of sharing your conversation, and just such wonderful kind of last snippets as well in terms of that connection. Actually, Abdul, that how do you actually connect to people, which is obviously the wider conversation we're talking about, but also just the intimate thing of how do you connect to your local theatre, let alone artists in different countries or international festivals or national festivals. And I suppose part of this panel series and part of everything that we do within the Alchemy Festival is about that attempt to demystify a lot of this, that actually, everyone here I know is very busy. People who work in theatre and run organizations are very busy, but the ambition to connect is still incredibly alive and vital for all of us. So absolutely, I think especially with the group of early career artists that we work with Arts Lab, I think that message is vitally important, that actually everyone does want to connect. It might take some people longer to respond than others, but the desire is there. We all want to make good work and do good things. So thank you very much. Radical change as well. Yes, absolutely. Radical change. Thank you to our virtual audience tonight as well. Thank you very much for sharing your time and spending your time with us. Please do check out the full Alchemy programme on our website, www.thenorthwall.com. We have one more panel event left this week. So if you are around at 6 o'clock tomorrow, please do join us to listen to the wonderful Emma Rice from Wise Children. And she will be chairing a discussion with a fantastic panel on the future of British theatre. That is no mean feat to solve that in an hour. Until then, thank you so much once again to our wonderful guests, Naseem, Abdul, Julia, Emma, and Chris. Have a lovely rest of your evening, everyone, and we will see you again very soon. Bye-bye.